Before I move forward, I'd like to welcome the Minister of Transportation for Ontario, Mr. Honorable Prabmeet Singh Sarkaria. Welcome to the Punjab Conclave. Also, I'd like to welcome Amarjeet Singh Gill, Member Parliament from Brampton. Welcome, Amarjeet ji. Now we can take a couple of questions. Please raise your hand, introduce yourself, and then ask your question. Please, no statements, only questions.
There's one question I wanted to ask the Minister. I agree that you're concentrating on all the problems that are happening, but are you, or is the system concentrating on how we are creating these criminals? For example, nobody talks about in school, when it starts at elementary and high school level, the kids are being so nurtured into crime. So I never hear anything about that they are paying attention to. So these are our future, and we think future progress, but at the same time, we are creating criminals because there is no, and if you speak to the teachers or the school system, which I have questioned Peel District School Board, and it is totally out of control. So on top of that, we are having external factors that are contributing to it. So we cannot only blame the external factors. We ourselves are producing criminals without control. Thank you.
I think to add to that, the fact that a lot of people, criminals or criminality is coming out of children. A lot of people the immigrants who came for studies and then they got thrown on the roads. I think some of them may have also contributed to what is happening here. What would you say?
I would say both things are a reality, but yes, ਆਪਾਂ ਦੇਖ ਰਹੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆਂ ਵੀ ਬਹੁਤ young age ਦੇ ਲੋਕ criminality ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ involved ਹੋ ਰਹੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ. I'm surprised you don't hear about that. I mean, there's different levels involved in that, but prevention programs are very important. So I know provincial level te vi preventative funding ditti jandi hai different organizations nu, federal level te vi public safety de vich. First and foremost, I would say sade pehle kei saal in the previous government, we talked a lot about this and we invested a lot of money into these types of programs. Gangs and gun funding, ek bahut vadi package of funding sigi jo police organizations nusti ditti jandi si to give down to their community groups and to also help them engage in the community to be a positive role model for young children. But they both factors ne. It starts at home as well. Generally around the world ਆਪਾਂ ਦੇਖਦੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਵੀ ਇਹਦਾ ਇੱਕ connection to socio-economic means ਵੀ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਆ. So ਜਦੋਂ economic times ਨਹੀਂ good ਹੁੰਦੇ ਹੈਗੇ, although we see an increase in crime. But I will say, ਵੀ ਆਪਣੀ South Asian community ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੁਝ ਥੋੜਾ different and unique ਦੇਖਣ ਨੂੰ ਮਿਲਦਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਆ. Because although generally most communities that is the case, apni community at the base level that is the case too. Par jo gangster life de vich, lifestyle de vich kuch log ja rahe hege ne, and khas karke jo Surrey de gangs to apa dekhiya hega ya in the 90s, crime was at the highest rates in the 1990s in Canada. So I think that's very important to know, understand as well. Jado aapa crime da graph dekhde hege ya Canada de vich, 90s is the peak graph time, not now. But certain crimes are increasing. Jis tarah main kiya homicides down aa rahe hege ne, but property crimes up ja rahe hege ne. Certain crimes are on an increase, but many crimes are also on a decrease, and that was our highest level. And although aapa Surrey de gangs, jo South Asian gangs khas karke scene de vich aaye sige, and काफ़ी popular gangsters जो आज तक भी उत्थे suffer कर रहे ने, or criminal organizations they through. Some of the most dominant and powerful gangs in that on the West Coast are heavily or the South Asian community is heavily involved in those organizations. But Hells Angels and dusriyan organizations, the UN gang, there's lots of different gangs ਜਿਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਵੀ ਉਹ ਕੰਮ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਐਂਡ ਉੱਥੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਦੇਖਿਆ ਹੈਗਾ ਵੀ ਵੈਲ ਟੂ ਡੂ ਫੈਮਲੀਜ਼ ਦੇ ਵੀ ਬੱਚੇ ਗੈਂਗਸਟਰ ਲਾਈਫ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਾ ਰਹੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ ਮਿਡਲ ਕਲਾਸ ਹਾਊਸਹੋਲਡਸ ਵਿਥ ਗੁੱਡ ਇਨਕਮਸ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਬੱਚੇ ਕ੍ਰਾਈਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਾ ਰਹੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਆਮ ਕਰਕੇ ਟ੍ਰੈਂਡ is not that. Usually ਤੁਸੀਂ poverty ਤੋਂ ਆਉਂਦੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਹੋ you don't have something and vulnerable ਹੁੰਦੇ ਹੋ ਜਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਆਪਾਂ ਸ਼ਾਇਦ international students ਜਾਂ you know international people ਦੀ reference ਲਾ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿਤੇ ਨਾ ਕਿਤੇ ਹੋ ਸਕਦਾ ਵੀ ਕੁਛ ਲੋਕ vulnerability ਕਰਕੇ you know they're getting involved in some of those things and ਕੁਛ ਲੋਕ already gang life ਤੋਂ ਆ ਰਹੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ so it's a mix of things but ਇਹ ਯੂਨੀਕ ਆ ਐਂਡ ਇਹ ਮੈਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਸਿਰਫ ਸੋਲਵ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਇਹ ਆਪਣੀ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਨੂੰ ਸੋਲਵ ਕਰਨਾ ਪੈਣਾ ਆਪਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਸੋਚਣਾ ਪੈਣਾ ਸਿਰ ਜੋੜ ਕੇ ਆਪਣੀਆਂ ਜੋ ਸੰਸਥਾਵਾਂ ਹੈਗੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਆਰਗੇਨਾਈਜੇਸ਼ਨਸ ਹੈਗੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਵੀ ਆਪਾਂ ਕਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਬੱਚਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਰੇਜ਼ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਐਂਡ ਜੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਕੋਲ ਸਭ ਕੁਛ ਹੈਗਾ ਉਹ ਤਾਂ ਵੀ ਕ੍ਰਾਈਮ ਵਿੰਨੀ ਕਿਉਂ ਜਾ ਰਹੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ ਆਈ ਥਿੰਕ ਦੈਟਸ ਅ ਰੀਲੀ ਬਿਗ ਕੁਐਸਚਨ ਐਂਡ ਅ ਵੈਰੀ ਯੂਨੀਕ ਕੁਐਸਚਨ ਜੋ ਆਪਣੀ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਲਈ ਖਾਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਹੈਗਾ
Sure, I think this is a very serious problem with Canada-born young teenagers getting into crime. It's a new trend and it's a very disturbing trend. Next question, please. Ji.
So this side.
ਇੱਕ ਮੰਗ ਉੱਠ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਇੱਕ ਗਰੁੱਪ ਨੂੰ ਟੈਰਰਿਸਟ ਆਰਗੇਨਾਈਜੇਸ਼ਨ ਡਿਕਲੇਅਰ ਕਰ ਦਿਓ ਤੇ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਉਹ ਨਾਮ ਬਦਲ ਸਕਦੇ ਨੇ ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਉਹ ਤੇ ਉਹਦੀ ਬਜਾਏ ਪੂਰੇ ਦਾ ਪੂਰਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਆਰਗੇਨਾਈਜ਼ਡ ਕ੍ਰਾਈਮ ਹੈ ਇਹਨੂੰ ਇੱਕ ਟੈਰਰ ਐਕਟੀਵਿਟੀ ਦੇ ਤੌਰ ਤੇ ਡੀਲ ਕੀਤਾ ਜਾਏ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੋਨਾਂ 'ਚ ਕੀ ਡਿਫਰੈਂਸ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਇਹਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਕੀ ਸੋਚਦੇ ਹੋ ਤੇ ਦੂਸਰਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਇਹ ਕਰੰਟ ਸਟਰੀਮ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਨਵੀਂ ਵੇਵ ਹੈ ਕ੍ਰਾਈਮ ਦੀ ਆਪਣੇ ਕੰਟਰੀ 'ਚ ਇਹਦਾ ਇੱਕ ਲਿੰਕ ਸਾਡੀਆਂ ਇਮੀਗ੍ਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਪਾਲਿਸੀਜ਼ ਨਾਲ ਵੀ ਹੈ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਇਹ ਗੈਂਗ ਦੇ ਗਰੋਹ ਆਪਾਂ ਦੇਖ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਹੁਣ ਆਪਰੇਟ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਇਹ ਤਕਰੀਬਨ ਸਾਰੇ ਹੀ ਮਾਈਗ੍ਰੇਟ ਕੀਤੇ ਆ ਇੰਡੀਆ ਤੋਂ ਰੀਸੈਂਟਲੀ ਜਿੱਦਾਂ ਸਟੂਡੈਂਟ ਵੀਜ਼ਾ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਦੇ ਅੰਡਰ ਜਾਂ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਬਾਕੀ ਵੀਜ਼ਾ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮਾਂ ਦੇ ਅੰਡਰ ਸੋ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਇਹ ਲਿੰਕ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਇੱਥੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਆਮ ਸੁਣਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਪੰਜਾਬ 'ਚ ਕਿ ਇੱਥੇ ਬੰਦਾ ਇਹਦੀ ਕ੍ਰਿਮੀਨਲ ਹਿਸਟਰੀ ਸੀ ਇਹ ਬੰਦੇ 'ਤੇ ਮਰਡਰ ਦੇ ਚਾਰਜਸ ਸੀ ਅਤੇ ਇਹਨੂੰ ਵੀਜ਼ਾ ਲੱਗ ਗਿਆ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦਾ ਸੋ ਉਹ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਪਾਰਟ ਹੈ ਇਹ ਦੋਨਾਂ ਪਾਰਟਸ 'ਤੇ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਕੀ ਕਮੈਂਟ
ਸੋ ਇਸ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਥੋੜ੍ਹਾ ਜਿਹਾ ਕੁਐਸਚਨ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਵੀ ਸੀਗਾ ਕਨਵਰ ਜੀ ਵੀ ਇੰਡੀਆ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਕੀ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕੀਤੀ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਇਸ ਚੀਜ਼ ਨੂੰ ਇੰਡੀਆ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਵੀ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਇਹਦੇ 'ਤੇ ਕੀਤੀ ਗਈ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ there are people that are provided clean records in order to come to Canada. ਕੁਛ ਇੰਟਰਨੈਸ਼ਨਲ ਗੈਂਗਸਟਰਸ ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਬੋਰਡਰ ਪਤਾ ਵੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗਾ ਕਿਸ ਬੋਰਡਰ 'ਤੇ ਕਿਸ ਵਕਤ ਕਿਸ ਕੰਟਰੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਬੈਠੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਲਾਈਕ we've been looking for Ryan Wedding ਜਿਹਦਾ ਹੁਣੀ ਇੱਕ ਫਿਰ ਦੁਬਾਰਾ ਲਿੰਕ ਆ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈਗਾ right the Canadian who's one of the top 10 most wanted in America in the world $10 million bounty he's crossing international borders all the time right so jo gal simple lagdi hegi a oh often simple nahi hegi kyunki ye jehde criminal organizations ne they're very sophisticated and yes we are making changes I will start with that bi jithe koi gap siga and jithe koi kami sigi onu asi band kar rahe hege a loopholes nu ਉਹਦੇ 'ਤੇ ਕੰਮ ਕੀਤਾ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਐਂਡ ਯੂ ਸੀ ਮੈਂ ਸਭ ਕੁਛ ਨਹੀਂ ਰਿਵੀਲ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੀ ਨਵੀਂ ਲੈਜਿਸਲੇਸ਼ਨ ਬਾਰੇ ਪਰ ਯੂ ਸੀ ਅ ਲੋਟ ਆਫ ਥਿੰਗਸ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਇਸ ਇਸ਼ੂ ਨੂੰ ਟੈਕਲ ਹੋਊਗਾ ਨਵੀਂ ਲੈਜਿਸਲੇਸ਼ਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪਰ you're still going to have people that fake their identity that do a lot of different things to be able to get over international borders. That's why ਜਿਹੜੀ ਆ ਸਾਡੀ information sharing ਹੈਗੀ ਆ countries ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਤੇ cooperation ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਉਹ ਬਹੁਤ important ਹੈਗੀ ਆ and so Prime Minister Carney ਨੇ ਵੀ ਇਹਦੇ ਤੇ highest level ਤੇ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ Indian officials ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਤੇ Indian ਦੇ Prime Minister ਦੇ ਨਾਲ.
So we have one more question this side.
I have a quick question about the fact that you mentioned cybercrime and involving kids, childhood exploitation. So the UK recently passed age verification laws and the EU has also floated the idea of curbing end-to-end encryption. So given the fact that trust is quite low in immigrant communities or amongst minorities in general, how do you think Canada is going to tackle that without the perception that it's going to trample on privacy or there's over-surveillance or policing in some way or the other?
Yeah, so jo legislation mein June di gal kar rahi si, in June we passed C2, which was the Stronger Borders Act was the title of the act, but within that there was a portion of the bill dedicated to lawful access, giving police quicker access to being able to link and identify people to their IP address and to phone numbers. So the policing agencies used to have a very hard time. Although they are allowed to receive that information, the capacity that subscriber companies had, internet and telephone companies and others, the capacity wasn't there, and sometimes the willingness wasn't there. And so, is bill de naal, we are going to make them build that capacity, that all those companies operating for Canadians have to be able to have the capacity to quickly provide this information to the police so that investigations can happen quickly. But I'm going to say, ode naal backlash vi kafi hega from civil advocacy groups saying that this is going to trample on people's privacy and freedom, and I think these things need to be balanced, and there's also a lot of misinformation at times. So if you need to get into someone's data and into someone's system, you would still need, there's oversight on all of it through the judiciary, but to be able to access that type of information, you would need a full warrant. But to be able to access just link Biki number, ja IP address, is na, ja is address de na linked tega, that is the information that would be more easily accessible to policing agencies, so they know whether to suspect certain people. It helps them further their investigation, also gives them a basis to get a warrant if they really need to go one step further. But I think as a society, if we want public safety, we are going to have to be willing to let go a little bit of a certain level of privacy. And that's just the way it is. It has to be, it's necessary. And I would love the help of the community, because as we put forward new legislation, these issues are going to come up again. And I assure you that we are being very mindful that we don't cross that line that is going too far. And as for the legislation in the UK, that is something I've been looking at right now, and that is, they have different levels. They don't have the Charter of Rights and Freedoms in the UK. They have slightly different laws that they have to adhere to than the Constitution we have. So there's some things that New Zealand, Australia is able to do that we're not able to, but we're figuring out ways, and this new piece of legislation is going to have a lot of recommendations jo police ne sanu ditte hege ne, jo RCMP, jo difficulties and challenges o face kar rahe sige, o challenges nu assi remove karange so that it is a little bit easier, but at the same time with a balance so that we're not completely, of course, not adhering to our charter, because that's important. Otherwise, the Supreme Court is just going to overturn our law, and there's no point. Then all that work that we did was for nothing. So we always have to, because of that, keep a certain balance. But we're going to do everything possible to make sure we have similar abilities as our other Five Eyes partners, so that criminal organizations ਜਦੋਂ ਆਪਾਂ information ਵੀ share ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ, ਉਹ ਆਪਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ trust ਕਰ ਸਕਣ, ਆਪਾਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ trust ਕਰ ਸਕੀਏ, and they know where the information is going when they give it to us. There's a lot of complexity in all of this, but I've been working really hard to understand all of it, to recommend it, and to make sure that it's in the legislation that's coming up.
So any other question?
My name is Dinesh Sahani, and I have a question, or I would like to, if you can enlighten us on, like, Chor Police game, we need to be proactive. So there are a lot of AI, there are a lot of emerging threats which we don't know yet, but AI is a tool or a disruptor which can cause a lot of damage going forward. So especially in the areas of cyber crime and financial crime, a country like ours, where we have lot of dependency, or we are very, very integrated into its way of life, said more proactively on the
Yeah, so Trudeau Sarkar de thalle assi cyber security center, Canada's first ever cyber security center create ਕੀਤਾ ਸੀਗਾ। ਉਹ ਇੱਕ ਵੱਡਾ department ਹੈਗਾ ਆ that works with banks that identifies trends. The RCMP also has a cybersecurity section that we've increased the amount of people that work in that cybersecurity center. They're in constant touch with international countries and their agencies and with our corporations, our big businesses, because they invest a lot of money too to be able to protect themselves. But just recently, both Vadi conference Ottawa Chhoisigi cybersecurity no leke with all the big players and all the big major companies that are involved. And all I can say is we're trying to learn best practices. We're trying to make sure that we keep ahead of the criminals. But obviously, this is a fast-paced, moving environment. And are we there? I would say a lot more is needed to make sure that the government is up to speed and has the rules and regulations that are needed, because things are moving so fast, like you're saying, in the AI environment. But ਅਸੀਂ also government technology ਨੂੰ ਕਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ also use ਕਰ ਸਕਦਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਆ to help itself and to help Canadians. ਇਹ ਵੀ implement ਕੀਤਾ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ। RCMP, CBSA, all of these organizations AI technology ਨੂੰ ਹੁਣ ਆਪ ਵੀ use ਕਰ ਰਹੀਆਂ ਹੈਗੀਆਂ ਨੇ to help them. And so I say we have had a lot of great discoveries, but ਜਦੋਂ ਵੀ ਕੋਈ ਕੇਸ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਫੜਿਆ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਆ before ਕੋਈ breach ਹੁੰਦਾ ਹੈਗਾ, the company never wants disclosure of those things, right? So ਉਹ ਕਾਫੀ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਪ੍ਰਾਈਵੇਟ ਰੱਖੀਆਂ ਜਾਂਦੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਰੈਪੂਟੇਸ਼ਨ ਨੂੰ ਹਾਰਮ ਪਹੁੰਚਦਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਆ। ਯੂਜ਼ਰ ਡਾਟਾ ਜਦੋਂ ਰਿਲੀਜ਼ ਹੋ ਜਾਂਦਾ, ਜਦੋਂ ਨੋਟੀਫਾਈ ਕਰਦੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ, but there has a lot of good work that's being done to prevent it before it happens. And so ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ concern note ਕਰਦੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ. And there is going to be a big piece of legislation again to update our act, or all our acts when it comes to AI and cybersecurity. So ਆਉਣ ਵਾਲੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਾਲ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਾਫੀ ਨਵੀਂ developments ਦੇਖੋਗੇ from a legislative perspective.
So the last question from...
Just take one more question, please. Last question.
What's your stance on both defense and self-defense? There are people breaking in and the owner ends up shooting them and getting charged. So what's your stance on that? And when can we get the legal handguns back to the legal licensed users?
So there are no plans to make handguns more accessible to people, but we have a rigorous licensing regime. There's 3 different types of guns and 2 different types of licenses you can get. Those guns are still available for people that need that. But no, there are no plans to make guns more easily accessible to Canadians. I have to give you my honest answer on that. As for self-defense, it is a defense under Canadian law. But defenses are used in the court of law. So if you are in an altercation with somebody and you're using self-defense, then that would be your defense against any charge in a courtroom. And you know, if somebody breaks into your house, I think it's quite likely that you would have the ability to use self-defense, given the fact that if it is reasonable and warranted under that situation. So absolutely, like my personal opinion is that a person will do whatever they need to do to defend themselves, their family. That can be argued in court, and that often defense lawyers are very successful using these defenses. And we've seen throughout common law, through the US and Canada, that there's a lot of success when this defense is used. So I think किते ना किते थोड़ा misconception हैगा भी तुसी कुछ भी नहीं कर सकते. I know recently a case highlight hoya kuch din pehla hi, maybe 2 days ago, that was out of Lindsay, Ontario. Mainu us case de sare details nahi pata aega, but a knife was involved in that case. I think there is more nuance to that case than we know. And at the end of the day, jadon koi police officer us crime scene te pahunchda hega, unna kol discretion hega ya, abdi judgment oh use kar sakte hege ya as to what charges they want to lay and what charges they don't want to lay. And kediyan charges reasonable hegiyan given the circumstances. So police have a lot of discretion. And self-defense is a defense in Canada. But if somebody is stealing your car and they are driving off and you shoot them, I think in the court of law, you'll have a harder time proving that that was a reasonable amount of force being used to protect property. But if the person is a threat to you or any human life, I think you would have a much easier time using the defense of self-defense.
There is a general feeling that you have a gun at home and somebody tries to rob you or breaks into your house. Can you not use the gun against him?
So when you get a gun license, all of this is given, information is given to you, and you are educated on how to use a gun. And no, guns are not supposed to be used to kill people. When you sign up for a license, you say the intended purpose of that gun. In every case, once again, the facts are laid on the table. What happened in that incident, whether it is reasonable under the circumstances, is something that is considered. So I think sometimes we want high-level answers to this, and there's no given, like, yes, everyone can go out and kill somebody. Like, I won't be able to give you that answer here today. It depends on the circumstance, and you could be successful in the court of law using a defense.
So please keep
Just
your
make it
question
short
very
because,
brief. Yeah.
It's going to be very brief. Ruby, you've been mentioning reasonable. ਬਹੁਤ ਸੁਣੀ ਦਾ reasonable. Reasonable ਨੂੰ define ਕਿਵੇਂ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ? ਹੁਣ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ ਮੇਰੇ ਘਰੇ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਕੋਈ ਲੁੱਟਣ ਆ ਗਿਆ. ਹੁਣ ਮੈਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਹੀ ਸੋਚੂੰਗਾ reasonable force ਕਿੰਨੀ ਵਰਤਣੀ ਹੈ. ਉਹ don't you think ਕਿ law ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ constitution 'ਚ time ਆ ਗਿਆ ਆ ਕਿ reasonable ਨੂੰ define ਆਪਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕਰਨਾ ਪਵੇ ਤਾਂ ਕਿ ਕੋਈ ਮਾਤੜ ਐਵੇਂ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਆਪਣੇ ਬਚਾਅ ਕਰਦਾ ਖਰਾ ਖੁਦ ਜੇਲ੍ਹ 'ਚ ਨਾ ਚਲੇ ਜਾਵੇ.
So it has been defined, like that's what precedence does. Many court cases have defined what is considered, but it's up to a judge. See, it's not up to me to say in a certain facts and certain scenario, because I think what everyone's looking for is a clear across the board answer, and you'll have Prabmeet up next to, and maybe he could shed some light as a lawyer on this issue as well. But it really depends on the circumstance. And feel free to correct me on anything. But I hear your outrage, I hear the concern, and it is something that I will definitely raise. If more clarification and guidelines can be provided through the federal government, that will be done. It's something policing agencies can also do within the training of their officers. And so I'll definitely take that back. I know the feeling that people are feeling right now.
Well, thank you very much, Ruby. It has been a very useful session. I know what you handle is a very sensitive file, but I'm sure there are huge concerns of the community, and I'm glad that you agreed to come and address all those concerns. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. I think if I could, in closing, just say one thing, that there are certain issues that might be solely federal or solely provincial or solely municipal. Like education is very clear-cut provincial, right? Water and garbage and, zoning, zoning provincial, municipal, but some things are very clear-cut municipal. And the area of justice and criminal reform is not only federal, but I feel people think it is federal. Like I said, laws can be changed. Extortion carries a penalty of life in prison. Over 25 years in jail you can get, and there are minimum sentences linked to extortion. So I know there's some conversation be minimum sentences nahi hage. If you are extorting somebody with a firearm, there's a 7-year minimum on that. And so it's a very serious crime. Ek criminal code de vich hega ya. Criminal code de vich evi hega bhi tusi public safety nu consider karna bail den vele, right? Like these things are in the criminal code. But a big aspect of this is also shared because enu kis tarah apply kita janda through police, through our courts, through Crown Council. That is a huge part of it as well. And so I look forward to changing more laws for you, making them harder, making bail more strict. We are going to do all of that stuff. We're going to do it. But we'll hopefully, across all provinces, have good partners at the table so that we all do, they do their part as well to make sure that police can lay charges in BC, to make sure that Crown Council has good resources, and that they also oppose administrative defiance of administrative court orders. That's very important as well in this whole piece, I think. So lots of things to do, and I think we have good cooperation. We've been sitting at the table together, and we have all of your support and a mandate to make big changes, and we're going to make big changes. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruby. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Ruby Sahota, and thank you, Kanwar Sandhu.